Joining me now for more insight into what is being discussed at that summit is Sourabh Gupta. He is a resident senior fellow at the Institute for China-America Studies. Thank you so much for joining our program.
You're welcome.
Well, let's first talk about, just generally speaking, what are some of the key issues we should be looking at this year's ASEAN Summit?
I think the key issues that we should be looking at is, once again, economic cooperation. They have their free trade arrangements, the RCEP in particular, and countries want to deepen their connectivity and their economic ties and advance the cause of mutual development. We will be looking for security-related issues, particularly China and ASEAN, and where they stand on their code of conduct in the South China Sea, which should be important to see how close or how far they still remain. And of course, with President Biden landing up in the region very soon, or probably already there, we're going to obviously be looking at where US and China stand and what its ramifications are for the larger Indo-Pacific region.
I want to go into that relations between China and the U.S. They've already been mentioned, with Cambodia's spokesperson for the summit saying that ASEAN does not want to choose sides, that they want to work closely with both countries. How important, if you could explain, are these countries individually to the region, and how important is this relationship between the U.S. and China to that region?
The two countries are indispensable for the region. It's just plainly speaking, indispensable. ASEAN cannot do without either of them. And to be very frank, even the United States and China see ASEAN as being integral to their Indo-Pacific strategies or Asia-Pacific strategies. The national security strategy of the Biden administration, which came out last month, says ASEAN centrality is at the heart of our Indo-Pacific strategy. This is a very important relationship. As you mentioned, neither party, ASEAN does not need or want to choose sides and wants to retain agency. The geopolitics of the Asia-Pacific is not going to be resolved tomorrow or even in a decade's time. And everybody wants to be part of that play and at the same time wants to retain agency so that their core national interests are defended. And I hope that one of their core national interests is development, and that all parties would engage each other and try to grow the pie so that everybody can be more prosperous, and that will lend stability to the region.
You mentioned security. One thing is the Myanmar crisis is also expected to be on the agenda. Of course, Myanmar is not being represented here at this time. What might come out of those discussions on that particular topic?
I think we are seeing from ASEAN itself a hardening of their line. Myanmar has played rejectionist. It has not been a team player. And I think ASEAN needs to prove and wants to prove its own credibility to the United States and to external partners that a country which disregards basic fundamental norms as the Myanmar junta is doing, that they will be excluded from the processes involved out here. So I think Myanmar should be ready to be more marginalized out here, with Timor-Leste coming in principle, going to exceed. Myanmar's isolation will be felt even greater. And I do hope at some point of time the junta will realize that it is really, really going down a wrong path, which brings no benefit to anybody, will continue with the conflict, and will hurt them the most.
Sourabh, if I could ask you, this summit is just getting started, but do we expect any significant announcement, do you think, that will come out of the summit once it concludes?
No, I'm not looking for significant announcements from the summit. You know, many of the economic processes or the security processes are ongoing. There's no big announcement to be had. But the very fact that folks have not had the chance to really meet in person for quite a while, I think is itself an important stepping stone to show that parties are again going back to normal, and that integrated, interconnected development as well as just diplomatic contacts is essential for prosperity and stability to be continued to be maintained in this region. So no big announcements per se that I can think of, but I think it's just important that all parties are, that ASEAN's moment in the sun is there right now, and that it is showing that it can exercise leadership and guidance to and help develop a consensus at a time when there's very little consensus within the international system, per se.